Hey everybody, it's Jason from the Texas Gun Vault 2, and we're back out here in the garage for another First Impressions and Garage Gun Talk video. And I have two things to talk about that I took to the range today that I am currently working on range reports with. And then I want to talk about some politics and California banning Glocks and what I think is going to happen, what should happen, and possibly what can gun companies do. But before I talk about that, I want to talk about the guns because that's mostly what you guys are here to hear me talk about. So I just want to get through with that first. I took two things to the range today to film content with. And by the way, I have to give my usual caveat in that I know some people will inevitably find this video because of the title. And you think, oh, this is the world's worst review. This is my second channel, hence the name, the Texas Gun Vault 2. If you want to go see the properly filmed reviews with proper edits and recorded on much better equipment than just my cell phone, the link is in the description below. This is my behind the scenes channel where I casually talk about guns with my biggest fans. And often when I take a couple of guns to the range and film that range content with, I like to just tell you guys what happened. And this is not, as I said, a full fleshed out review. So there's my little caveat. All right, so let's talk about the two things I shot today. One is a suppressor and one is a pistol. And the pistol I shot was the Smith & Wesson M&P Shield X. I think that's the actual name. I wanted to say M&P 9, but I think it's just M&P Shield X, because I think 9 is the only caliber this is offered in. And I guess this is one of the latest variants of the Shield, which is a pistol that I love, and I have a variant of this, a Performance Center version of the Shield Plus that I personally carry. And the X is, I guess, a more modern version of it. It does have an optics plate option. I ran it with iron sights. We have these very interesting cocking serrations front and back. At the heart of this gun, if you're used to shooting the M&P series or the M&P Shields, it's going to feel very familiar to you. The grip is definitely smaller. I think the dimensions of this gun is really what they've changed. It's bigger in some ways than the standard Shield. And I'm talking about like the original Shields, which are very small. It's a longer slide, longer barrel, and it feels and shoots like a bigger gun. But the grip feels smaller. Even though the actual length of the stock is longer, the length of pull is shorter. So it has some things about it that feel familiar and some things about it that I think are huge improvements. So the gist of my experience with this gun is that it shoots fantastic. Shoots absolutely fantastic. And out of all of the Shield variants I have reviewed, which is the Shield Plus, the Shield Plus Performance Center, and I think I did one more. This one by far is the best. It is the most accurate, and I did not experience any malfunctions. Richard, who lent this to the channel for review, said, hey, I had some problems with extraction. I did not have any problems whatsoever. He had an issue also with a slide would lock open, even if there was a round in the magazine. I did not experience that. I will say, something about it I don't like is this is going to be a slide lock and not a slide stop. Because when the slide is locked back, let me tell you, you cannot, if you like to run your guns that way, which I typically don't. I like to kind of do the slingshot method. But if you like to push the slide stop down to close the slide, you can't. You can't. So it is stout. So it makes me wonder if the slide locking open might have been Richard's grip. Maybe. I doubt. He's a really experienced shooter. So I just can't imagine that being the case. But that's the only thing I can imagine that issue being. Because I did not experience it. But that does not mean his experiences are invalid. It's just what I personally experienced and what I can report. So, but I do think he's a great shot and a great shooter. He's very experienced. So if that was the issue, he would have told me. But He said the gun was locking open when there were rounds in the magazine, and I did not experience that. The gun is less snappy than the smaller shields, which of course the slide is longer, a little bit more heft to it, but it's not as comfortable to shoot. I tonight filmed the garage portion of the range report on the Sig Sauer P365 Optic Ready, the small version. And my whole synopsis of that gun is very similar to this in that it shoots pretty good, but it's not a comfortable gun to shoot. And sometimes depending on the application of that gun, so in this case, this is a carry gun, it doesn't matter as much. If the gun is not as comfortable to shoot, it's not as important because it's a gun you're going to carry. This is not going to be a range toy, a range gun, a target gun. You should shoot it and train with it, but you're not buying it for it to be comfortable. And in fact, it kind of hurt. Now, I will say my thoughts on it might be a little bit biased because as of late, I've been having some bad rheumatoid arthritis flare-ups. If you guys don't know, I have rheumatoid arthritis. And the past couple of weeks have been a little bit rough for me. And I've had some issues with my hands, specifically my right hand and the joints right in here. So that might have been a contributing factor for why I did not feel this gun was as comfortable to shoot. But I think a lot of it has to do with the length of pull. I think it needs to be a little bit beefier here. But as I said, I think that's something that they changed dimensionally with the X. So it feels like a bigger gun than what it is. It shoots really good. And for my hands, which are kind of large, it's not as comfortable to shoot. So it's kind of, 6 of one and was it half dozen of another. So it just kind of depends on what you need the gun to do, how it would meld with your hand. And that's one thing that when it comes to reviewing guns, people don't seem to understand when they make comments. They're like, that gun's perfect in my hand. It's the most comfortable gun ever. How dare you? You're an idiot. And I'm like, well, my hands are probably a different shape and different size than yours. And I was trying to say, it's for my hands, doesn't work. Now, you can only extrapolate that useful information of, okay, I got large hands, it might not work for me. But if you're someone like, well, it didn't work for Jason, but I got smaller hands, or I have longer fingers or shorter fingers or whatever, it might be perfect for me. You can't assume that one gun is going to be perfect for everyone. And unlike the other guns in the M&P series, this gun does not have a modular backstrap. So it's just one thing. So it looks like it would, but it doesn't. So this is the size you get. You also get pretty good capacity. I think we get a 13-round magazine and a 15-round magazine. So, I guess just conclusion, the gun shoots great. It does not feel great for me. But I'm going to give it high marks because it does exactly what it's supposed to do. Might be a little bit big for me for the concealed carry aspect of it. If I was going to shoot or carry something this size, I probably still would go with a Glock 19. But it does its job, and I shot it very well. It was just the ergonomics for me. Okay, so that's the Shield M&P. Sorry, the M&P Shield X from Smith & Wesson. I want to make sure I get that right name. All right, the other thing I tried to review today is a suppressor, and this is the OSS ELQD762. Now, this is a discontinued suppressor because I believe OSS was either bought or merged with Huxworks. And if you know the Huxworks cans today, they all have that kind of unique end cap on them. And I believe on some of their branding, they still put OSS. But this is one of the older models that has been discontinued. People ask me, why in the world do you review discontinued silencers or discontinued guns? The answer to that is easy. Well, you might own one of these. You might be able to find one or get the option of getting one that's, new old stock. Or you just want to know what other designs and suppressors are capable of. So I still think there's valid information that you can get from a review on a silencer like this. And let me tell you, this one worked great. The host weapon was the Geissele MRGG Mark 1 and 6.5 Creedmoor. We've talked about this one in the past. And compared to the other Huxworks suppressor, which was the Flow 762 Ti that I recently reviewed, this one is way better. It is not as wide, it's heavier, because this one is obviously made of either stainless steel or Inconel. I'm not really sure which one. I got to do my research on it before I film the garage portion of the Ranch Report. It's definitely heftier, it's longer, it's thinner, but dang, is it a big difference. On the 6.5 rifle here, it was definitely noticeably quieter than the more modern version. I felt like it had just about the same amount of resistance. It did not get as hot, and it did pass my heat test barely. So it did get a little bit less than 50, or dissipate 50% of its heat in 5 minutes. But yeah, it worked good. Oh, the point of impact shift was moderate, which is the same as the other Huxworks suppressor I recently reviewed. And the ballistics was about the same statistically. So honestly, it kind of performed like all the other Huxworks cans. But the biggest change was the tone and the report. Now, I don't have the ability to measure decibel reduction. I can tell you this one definitely reduced the decibels more than the more modern ones, but its tone was fantastic. Fantastic. It wasn't as low and boomy as the Flow 762, which typically is going to give you a nice sound. This one just was more of a lower to mid-range thud. It sounded fantastic. Sounded fantastic. So it's just going to be another good suppressor review. It's just going to work great. I'm probably going to give it like 4.5 stars out of 5. And I will mention that this older design seems to work better than the new ones. It could also be because of the material it's made of. I'm not really sure if Inconel and stainless steel are just better materials for the flow-through baffle design or not. But yeah, this thing really worked. It really impressed me and works better than the more modern Huxworks one. So it's kind of sad this one is discontinued. But I think they do offer very similar ones to this under the Huxworks branding. But the end cap's going to be a little bit different. But yeah, it worked good. So anyway, those are the two things I took to the range, and those are going into the queue for me to film content on this week here in the garage. All right, and of course, I think you just heard my dog barking, and I told you, there she goes. She always likes to get in all these Texas Gun Vault 2 videos. She probably hears me talking in here and wants to get in on the action. Okay, so let's talk about the Glock ban in California and what I think is going to go on. Because I know some of you guys like to talk politics. Okay, so if you don't know, Gavin Newsom just signed a bill that is going to ban the sale, transfer, and so forth of pistols that have a cruciform, I don't know if it's a trigger bar or sear engagement. I forgot the exact wording, which essentially is going to affect guns like Glock, especially all of the Glock clones, probably guns like Smith & Wesson and so forth. I like the M&P series. And the argument is they are too easy to convert to full auto, because we all know we have a problem with these Chinese-made Glock switches that have come into the country. We've all seen the issues with those, and they are relatively easy to install, from my understanding. I mean, I've never done it. I've only seen pictures of these guns, and I do know that if you are an SOT or a special occupational taxpayer with the proper endorsements from the ATF, you can actually build those and do them yourself. But you got to have the right paperwork and all that kind of thing. So I've seen some of those at SOTs as well that were, legally converted. And I've asked them, I was like, is it hard to do? And they're like, not really. They say it can be a little bit tricky, but relatively easy to do. We know that these Chinese Glock switches have gotten in the hands of, gangsters out in California and so forth. So, of course, instead of going after the criminals, going after the importation of these, they decide to go after the most popular pistol in the United States. So what do I think is going to happen? And a lot of this is going to have to deal in the courts. So for me, I really can't predict what's going to happen because I look at the judiciary today as less than predictable because it really depends on which judge at the district court level is going to hear this case. Because we have so many activist judges these days that especially are ignorant on firearms. So option one is going to be, it's going to go to a district court. If it's a good judge, I have a feeling that they will probably enjoin it temporarily and until it can be heard. But most likely, if it is overturned at the district level, it will go to a three-judge panel, at the Ninth Circuit, and it will most likely get overturned and say, oh yeah, it's perfectly fine. And then of course it will go to the en banc Ninth Circuit, because I take all those, and eventually hopefully make it to the Supreme Court. But hopefully some judge along the way will realize, hey, you can't ban an entire class of weapons that essentially is used for lawful purposes in the rest of the country. The danger that this law sets and the precedent that it sets is all it would take is for somebody to prove that with enough time, know-how, tooling, you can turn a semi-automatic firearm into a fully automatic firearm, which is true of almost any semi-automatic firearm. They're going to say, well, we can ban it. And that's what I think they want to do. It's kind of one of those death by a thousand cuts thing. So I have a feeling that the Ninth Circuit will uphold the law, and our only hope is the Supreme Court. That's going to be our only hope on that one. I think at the district level it could be overturned, but the Ninth Circuit will overturn that judge and reinstate the law. But what can we do? Well, as civilians, there's not much we can do. But the gun companies are the ones that are going to have to step up on this one, because many law enforcement agencies use Glock. In California, a lot, I mean, that's probably their biggest seller. What Glock needs to do, and this is going to show gun owners if they're on our side or they're on the side of big government. When California wants to buy more Glocks for police officers or whatever, Glock has to say, no, we are not going to sell to a state that has banned our product to civilians. Now, there are companies that do that, like Barrett Firearms, they make the 50 cal rifles. They will not repair guns that are owned by jurisdictions that outlaw their guns. They will not sell to jurisdictions that ban their guns for civilian ownership. So good on them. I know there's a few other companies that are in that boat. So if Glock continues to sell to law enforcement in California and ignore, you guys as gun owners, then we all know what side of the aisle Glock is on, okay? And I hate to be that black and white, but if they're not going to stand up for civilians and their own product, then, but that's the only way it's going to stop. Imagine if all the gun companies collectively said, we will no longer sell to California law enforcement or the California government or any government in California. We will not repair your pistols if you send them in for warranty work. We will not supply you with parts. We will not supply you with service. Good luck. California would have to change their tune because they need firearms. They need firearms. And it's funny that the guns that they say are too dangerous for you are perfectly fine in the hands of law enforcement agencies there. And a lot of those law enforcement agents are not as well versed or knowledgeable about guns as you or I are. So that's the only way this is going to stop. The only way it's going to stop. But I can't convince Glock to do one thing or the other. But that's the only thing that's going to happen here. I just can't believe they're going to take this. I just wish these gun companies would stand up and say, you know what we're going to do? We're not going to sell to California government anymore. We're just not going to do it. We're not going to service them. We're not going to provide parts. And if enough companies did that, they're going to have to change their tune, because they can't force companies to sell guns to them by law. But if nobody will sell guns to them, what are they going to do? There you go. I think that's the only way out of this. But it shows where Gavin Newsom's mind is. It's going to be a death by 1,000 cuts. I guarantee you they're going to modify that bill in the future to say, okay, it doesn't cover the... Well, there's a way of modifying a 1911 to be full auto, so now we can ban that too. And they're going to keep banning and banning and banning and banning and banning it until there's nothing left. But they're going to say, oh no, you're allowed to own anything. You just can't own these. I mean, between a Glock ban, an assault weapons ban, or I'm using that, it's their term, banning this, banning that, you can't get anything in California. Nothing. You know, so what are you going to do? Anyway, there you go. That's all I got to talk about tonight. Thanks for joining me here in the garage. And if you watch to the end of this video and want to participate in the word of the day is going to be Glock. Glock is the word of the day because of the Glock ban. And I hope Glock stands up for themselves, stands up for the civilians of California, and stop selling to the government of California. It's the only way this is going to end. So there we go. So let me know your thoughts. And as always, thanks for watching.